and welcome to the TST Farsight webcast for tonight. And basically, we're going to be talking about using the scan tool to diagnose. I'm G. Trullian, the president of TST, with
Justin Kidd from Farsight Diagnostics.
And Pierre Respo, vice president of TST.
This guy's never lost for words. He's almost as bad as me. With that being said, tonight we're going to go over a couple of slides, but we're going to work on this car over here. You're going to see Justin on air in a little bit. But I want to ask him a couple of things, because if you're curious like me, I never heard of Farsight just till recently. So Justin, what is Farsight? What is it going to do for me, a shop owner, or other technicians out in the field?
So Farsight was put together. We want to put all of the best pieces of the industry in your hands in one particular place. We're a group of master trained technicians that want to help the industry in the best way possible. So we've outsourced everybody that we can think of that really is a pain point of the industry and put them in one particular place. We've sourced a ruggedized tablet for the industry. It's splash proof, it's drop proof. It's a really rugged piece of equipment, but on it, it's a Windows 10 environment where we can actually put on some of Bernie's equipment, Bernie from ATS with his eScan and his eScope. We also have some advanced diagnostic testing along with pass-through programming and advanced help with our master trained technicians. And
your pass-through programming is what company you using with that?
We use the DrewTech Technologies Cardac Plus 2.
Excellent. Cardac is a very, very capable tool. So let's say I'm this shop and I run into a problem. What's your tablet going to do for me?
So the tablet actually has a 2D barcode scanner. If you run into a problem, we can actually scan the VIN with the 2D barcode that's on the side of the equipment. And that actually calls up our technical support with a face-to-face live virtual technician to help you on screen. So we can take over the device. We can actually see in live time what you're looking at. And with the forward and rear facing camera, we can actually interface with the shop technician live.
So you can direct the technician to what area he should be looking at.
That's right. We can comb over the car.
This is really a Farsight.
It is.
It really
we thought about that.
Really gets in there. Now, guys, this is not going to be a commercial. I'm just doing this for you right now. The Farsight, our sponsor, to bring you this hour and a half or so webcast to give you some information, important information. You know, there are other hotlines that you guys have used, IATN and Identifix, great stuff. This is really way out there. This is the cream of the crop.
That's right.
So it's really, you know, as the internet has grown, has technically things evolved.
That's right.
Wow, you guys got something very good here.
Yep, we're really trying to think about all the pieces and all the struggles. We want to be in the daily environment of the shop all day, including some parts ordering as well.
Wow, pretty damn interesting. So we're pretty excited to have you here.
I really appreciate having us here.
No, not a problem.
Thank you very much.
Do you have anything else you want to add before we get rolling?
No, I think let's start diagnosing the car.
All right, so let's talk about what we have coming up. Here's what we're going to cover tonight. Fuel trim testing. Now, you know, a lot of guys think fuel trim, well, they get one or two different long-term fuel trims, bank one, bank two, and they're pretty much done. But did you realize there's different blocks of trim? So that's where this tool, the Automotive Test Solution Farsight tool here, and how they're going to guide you through how to diagnose a problem is going to come in real handy. We're going to talk about MAF testing. So the mass airflow sensor, a major, major problem on many vehicles. And it could skew fuel trim readings, right, Pierre?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, we see this all the time. So we're going to look at that. Mode 6. Well, Mode 6, as many of you know, I know a lot of you that are online, as you know, Mode 6 is super helpful in helping you diagnose a problem. Think about Mode 6 like this. You know, there's a DTC. The DTC, you have a code, you got a problem, right? But before the DTC, there's a pending code. And the pending code has to see two failures before it turns into the DTC, right? And Mode 6 is before that. Mode 6 has to fail X amount of times, depending on the manufacturer. It's all different. And then it'll progress to the pending code to the regular DTC. So if you want to predict if you got a problem on your customer's car or a car you're working on, and don't want that Friday night when you want to go home problem, the customer comes in, and now the check engine light came on, Well, if you would have had their car in there and ran mode 6, you may have told them, hey, look, Mrs. Jones, guess what? You got something going on here with your evap system. It's been failing in mode 6. It may set a code. And don't forget to write it down on the RO, because there's nothing like having it in writing rather than just saying it.
Yeah, you got to think of mode 6 as the pre-tests, the little tests that happen, and all the accumulated results are what go into a pending code and then a real code.
Excellent, Pierre. Excellent. Catalytic converter efficiency. Now, this is another one. Catalytic converter efficiency, super, super, super important. P0420, P0430, #1 code in this country and in Canada. So with P0420, how do you test that catalytic converter to really know that it's good or bad? Well, guess what? We're going to be able to show you that, how you can test it, including with wide range air-fuel ratio sensors. Okay? So now we're going to take questions, and since this is live, I like to say this, Pierre,
Yep.
because the real deal is, just like in your shop, things are going to happen that maybe we don't want them to happen.
And when we're on camera, they happen more often.
Yeah, we're pretty good. I mean, Pierre doesn't have any gas today or anything, so everything is
Yeah.
pretty good on this end.
Yeah.
But we're going to show you some neat stuff. So let's go over a few things first before we get on the car. Let's look at fuel trim. And when you're looking at fuel trim here, you could see the bottom part of the screen. This is at idle. This here is going up, and you can see two banks. One bank has 21 and 25% in two of the boxes. That means it's a command to give more fuel. Now, if you don't own this tool, it's a lot more difficult to figure out if you have a vacuum leak or not. And I want you to kind of type in, how do you figure out if you got a vacuum leak if you only got 2 long-term fuel tests? How? Okay. Well, let's take a look at this next slide. And what do you think about this? You got high numbers from 14, 21 up to 18, all the way through on both banks.
I want to just add something, Jerry, just because you may not see this on camera. This is the percentage of load, how far you're into it, and this is the RPM. So each one of these blocks, say this is 50%, and 2,000 RPM, you're 50% load, 2,000. So that's what those blocks are.
Yeah, and you don't see these blocks. You all know there are blocks, fuel cell blocks, correct? And if you don't know what fuel cell block it's in, you may not know if it's a vacuum leak, if it's a problem with the sensor, or is it fuel delivery issues. So that being said, let's stop there a second, and let's see if you have any questions for us. Does anyone have any questions or comments? So Pierre, can you go take a peek? So Pierre's going to be reading some of the questions or comments, and a lot of people just don't know what they have. And what do I mean by that? Well, yeah, it could be a vacuum leak, but it could also be a bad sensor. And a lot of people throw bad, a sensor, a brand new sensor in, and it's not a bad mass airflow sensor. It could be a fuel delivery problem. So we're going to talk about the best way to see this is if we're just high numbers on the bottom, that is going to be a vacuum leak. If we have high numbers, like in this case, going all the way through, you're going to have a sensor problem, a load problem, meaning mass air, map type of issue. And if you were good on the bottom, good in the middle, and only bad up top, you could have a clogged fuel filter. You could have a problem with the fuel pump itself. You could have a voltage drop at the pump. These are all the possibilities by looking at fuel trim. So what we're going to do is actually have Justin start the vehicle up, and we're going to look at fuel trim on his car. And Pierre, I guess, is looking for some questions.
Yeah, the only question I see that's relevant to what we just said was actually a while ago, and it was somebody asking if the rear O2 is the only thing that's a post-cat fuel control sensor. And the answer is yes. Only the rear, it's either controlled from the regular wideband, air fuel ratio sensor or oxy sensor up front, or there are some circumstances where the post-catalytic converter oxygen sensor is actually used for fuel control. There's no other sensor. It's not like a temperature sensor
No,
or
no.
anything else that's controlling, that's
So
feedbacking for the mixture.
Correct. So your rear O2 sensor, we kind of said this a little earlier before we started, the rear O2 sensor can definitely cause an issue with fuel control or fuel delivery.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. You may want to go look at a Motor Age magazine article. I believe it was in last month's issue. It's on a Ford vehicle with a 2096 and a 2098. That's the rear O2 fuel trim, 2 lean type of codes. And you would wonder, well, why in the world, if it is lean, why don't I get a P0171 or a 174? Well, manufacturers do different things. And that one was a real bear. Check that article out, look at it. So we're going to get ready to start this vehicle up. And we're going to look at this. Justin, you can take that tablet right in the car with you.
The bottom line is it's a strategy. If they're using the rear O2, it's a strategy based on whatever programming they've got for that particular situation.
And we're going to switch screens now while he starts the car up. And if there's any questions, I'm going to go over there and look at it while they set this all up.
So now you're looking at the screen for the tool itself.
Yeah, the tool itself is eScan, because someone had that question. And again, it is basically one of the many tools that they use. And Justin, could you move that screen over a little bit? There we go, that's a little better. Okay, and let's go and look into sharpshooter. No, first go to PIDs. Let's look at PIDs.
Now this is the ATS scan. This is not the only strength in this tool. This is only one aspect of what it can do, but what you do here is the same as you could do on any other computer.
So let's look at long and short-term fuel trim. If you would check those, please. There you go. Okay, so we were just looking at some PIDs, but now we're looking at something much more.
This is fuel trims. Now this is, you can look at long-term or short-term or both together. And the idea here is, what I like to do is use the same type of driving profile for every car so I kind of get the same type of results. I know what to look for. In this case, so this is low percentage of power you're asking for and low RPM, all right? You're not going to fill every box. It's almost impossible to fill every box on a drive. You're looking for trends, for kind of scenarios. If, in this case, it's all green and the trims are very good, these numbers are 2, 1, minus 3, 1, you know, they're very close to 0. If you find that it's, for example, adding fuel down at the bottom and nowhere else, then you're looking for a fuel leak, an intake manifold leak. If you're getting a wide range of trims, say it's adding or subtracting fuel all over the screen, that's some kind of a sensor problem. Mass air, temperature, generally it's a sensor problem like that. Mass air being the #1 culprit. Map, barrow type of sensors on some cars today now, they're going back to map and barrow as opposed to mass air. And if it's only at the top, if it's adding fuel only at the top, then you have some kind of a fuel delivery issue. That's what Jerry was talking about before. Now there's other circumstances that can cause some other biases. You have to analyze it. I mean, this is not the answer to all your problems. It's the guide. It's the way it points you down the road to decide where you're going. Now, Jerry has created a vacuum leak. Maybe Justin, if you rev it up a little bit, just a little bit, we'll see it. So here's one of the things about this program. This program will stop looking at idle after a while because it doesn't want, if you've let off the gas, for example, or something.
Yeah, why don't you show them the numbers that are going in red?
Now, so he created a vacuum leak. 26%, all at the bottom. That's a vacuum leak. Now, we haven't gone through the whole test profile, obviously, but if you drove a real car with a real vacuum leak and it had that, but was turning maybe amber and then see it changes as it updates. If it turns amber and then green everywhere else, then you should be looking for a vacuum leak. That doesn't mean this tells you where the vacuum leak is. That means it tells you to test for it.
Well, let's stop right there. Notice how it came down, and when you raised it up, notice what happens. I'm going to make that vacuum leak again. And again, on your regular scan tool with only 2 long-term fuel trims, you're not going to really see this. You got to look for what? What do you want to look for on your scan tool to know if it's a vacuum leak? We'll get back to that answer in a second. I'm going to make that vacuum leak again.
Now, here's something about this tool, just so you know. If you're driving the car and you have gotten into the power and you let off the gas, it will stop looking. It doesn't want a false number on B-cell because you have B-cell fuel cutoff, right?
Yeah, look at it update.
So now,
Starting to update.
Now, so it's already got a number, and actually it's adding 10, 11% there. Even though it shows green there, that was 10% trim. So that's the strength of the tool as far as finding where your problem is.
And, when you look at that, again, it's only at idle. So now we're going to ask Justin to load this vehicle up and try to race it up so we can get this block filled in a little better.
Now, we're in a shop and we do not have a dyno, so this doesn't exactly mimic the real world on the road, but it's
similar.
going to give you the idea.
Go ahead, Justin.
All right, you see what's going on here? It's filling in. Now, he can't go all the way up. He's stalling the torque converter.
And give it quick.
There you go. And that's about all, but this car's in very good fuel control. 2%, -2, 2, -1, -1, -2, -2, and so forth. Pretty good numbers.
Notice, Pierre, we went through the whole range.
Right.
This has no fuel delivery problem.
Right.
Okay? Now, that being said, this is an easy way to check if you have, again, any vacuum leak problem, if the color is high or the numbers are high all the way through, a sensor problem like mass air, if you have it good all the way through except for the top, fuel delivery issue. So fuel trim is a great thing to look at. And here where you see both banks, here, get that fan going on. When you look at both banks here, I'm going to go move in on both of them here. Look at the other side. So you have an even setup right here. Okay? So this is a great test rather than if you could just go to the PIDs. Just go directly to the PIDs, please.
Here's the PIDs. Now, these are updating as we go. A little hard to read. From your viewpoint, you probably can't, but
Just put off the one with the blue.
okay, 0.7812, that was percent fuel trim, bank 1, long-term fuel trim, and a percentage. Points, all right? Now, of course, if you're using regular scan data, you would have to do that on a wide range of circumstances to figure out what the vehicle was doing. In this case, you'd have to read that RPM, the temperature, and look at all the other trims at the same time.
But Pierre, just point to that one fuel trim PID we have right there.
Actually, Justin, can you go up on the screen?
No, you got it right there. It's there.
No, well, I've only got 2. I got only short-term bank 2, but bank 1 is, there we go. So short-term is 0, long-term is, this is for bank 1, is 0.78. On bank 2, it's it's 0 bouncing to -0.7 and -1.5 on the other side, long-term.
Okay. Now we have a good question here. Are these actually looking at the fuel trim cell blocks of the PCM using?
Yes, they're using it for cell blocks.
Or is this an algorithm?
No, this is cell blocks. This is, so in OBD2, it has to be real data, not modified, with one exception, early air fuel ratio sensor numbers.
So this is actually unbelievable information because, you know that question I asked you before? How do you tell on any other scan tool? On any other scan tool, you better hope they give you what cell number it actually is reporting the fuel trim.
Now, when you're looking at live data, what you have to look at is RPM, wherever it is here. There is 5 to 600. You have to look at the trim number, and you have to look at the load number. So you have to look at all three of those to figure out what cell block you're in.
Right, so this makes it a lot easier to figure out if you have a problem. Okay, it's way better way than trying to take a peek, and we know those numbers are a little small there. Go to meters. Go to meters and put the fuel trim number up there. It'd be a little easier.
Good graphs.
So as he's switching that over,
Actually, not in digital. Let's do digital.
okay,
There we
so
go.
if we have the fuel trim, you may have to change them. Here's short term.
Yeah, we got it here. Short term 2 to
So we have a negative minus 1.5 on long term.
not letting us do it anyway. All right, we're going to just do bank 2. Because we'd have to play too much, and that's how we stall too much on the video here. So these are short-term and long-term for bank 2. You got RPM here. You got TP, basically load. And these other things aren't really going to be too much in your thinking when you're looking for a mixture problem. Runtime and total trim and so forth. Total trim you look at, but you're looking at all of them, Total trim is actually the number we usually want to look at first.
Yeah, why don't you just go into mode 6 for a second, please? And let's take a look at mode 6. You notice there's nothing in there. If you could scroll up and down, there's a little oxygen sensors.
So anything that's yellow is not really bad yet, but it's getting close to the limits. So you may want to look at them, at least kind of give it a look-see to see if it's relevant to your problem. May not be. But, so there's a minimum limit, a maximum limit. There's a field here for the units, volts, percentage, whatever. And then the test value. So here, for example, on this oxy sensor monitor, bank 1, sensor 1, ridge to lean thresholds. There's a lot of these tests. The 0.450 was the test value, and the minimum limit and the maximum limit. In other words, there's no variation allowed.
Okay, we had a couple of comments or questions here, and I just want to clear this up. Someone had asked about the fuel trim, if you don't have this,
if you don't have this
you
tool,
can basically look in mode 6. It's basically graphed essentially for mode 6. Fuel trim numbers are not graphed from mode 6. Fuel trim numbers are fuel trim numbers. Notice there's nothing in here for the fuel trim. These are all oxygen sensors. Just so no one gets confused out there.
Right.
Okay. And this is Bernie's eScan. He said that in the beginning. Farsight basically is, as Justin said before, they're out there to help technicians with a virtual technician across the internet.
So the idea here is there's this tool, the eScan that we're using now, and there's technical help. They have technicians who are trained, who actually know what they're doing, answering questions when you get into trouble and need help. There's the DrewTech Cardac for pass-through applications. Of course, you'd have to pay the subscription to whatever manufacturer's website you're dealing with, but you have that. And
it is pre-installed on the tool.
And it's all on there, right.
So why don't we look now, take a deeper look since we're into mode 6. Let's go down to Misfire data. We'll zoom back in. So we got a couple of misfires going on there.
Actually, I don't see misfire. There we go. Okay. So it's flagging some stuff with misfire counts. Numbers are real low. I mean, 3, one had 29, one was 1, one was 11. So these aren't like the kind of things that would necessarily be a problem yet. But obviously, if you have an intermittent misfire condition with the car, you want to be looking at this stuff more.
What's the limit on it, Pierre?
Okay, the limit was, so the minimum limit was 0, of course. The maximum limit, by the way, this may not always be the number that you think it is. Sometimes it's some arbitrary number. The maximum was 65,535.
So it's far away. And by the way, you see when the screen is flashing, everyone? Notice in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you see read continuous? Well, on this scan tool, this tool is requesting that information all the time you see it flash.
Constantly
so
updating.
It's basically going, you hear that banging? It's saying, hey, what's going on there? Now, many a times you may have to drive the car to update mode 6. But right here in this very bay, doing a webcast a while back, we had a car that updated right here, a 2015 Hyundai, that showed you the Misfire updated right when we were doing it. So always try to pick a scan tool that shows you read continuously, not read once. Read once is going to give you the last known problem that it actually had.
And you'll have to hit the button read once over and over and over again, or get out of the scan tool and re-enter it in order to get the next read.
Are there multiple tools? We had a question that you can put on Farsight. Well, there are tools like a lab scope. There is an enhanced factory type scan tool that has, factory type software. There's Misfire detector. There's the transducer stuff. There's a 4-channel lab scope. There's the video scope.
The borescope, right?
The borescope. And there's much, much more coming. I think the biggest thing is really that you have a technician that is really virtual. You can come on and be in your shop because that tablet actually has a camera front and back. I'm going to show you the camera, we'll show you the tablet just a little bit later on. Okay? So there's multiple tools on it. Why don't we look now that we looked at mode 6 here, why don't we go into what was on our list there, Misfire's mode 6. Let me go back there a second.
Cat efficiency. We were going to do a cat efficiency.
We're going to go to mass airflow.
Oh, we wanted to do mass airflow.
So we want to stop the test from running. That slows everything up. And let's go into the cat testing here. Let's get it off hold, Justin.
This was a previous test we did, by the way.
Go back. Please go back to the volumetric efficiency. Start test. Oh, you got to take it off hold on the bottom. You see the hold? Oh. So as he's doing that, taking it off hold, we're about 300 feet above sea level here. And basically, we have it set up. It's about 68 degrees in here. Not that it's 68 degrees outside. This is New York, okay?
In January.
In January, but it's been pretty mild anyway.
Yep.
But we're going to run this test. So now, we're going to actually mimic this. This should be done on the road, but we're going to show you a couple of neat things here. So Justin, why don't you load this up? And you're going to see two graphs here. The yellow one is the actual volumetric efficiency, and the other one is going to be the calculated for this vehicle. So
and they should be pretty close to each other.
So let's do it again. We may have something else running in the background that you're not updating. So make sure everything else is turned off. Go to mode 6, make sure that's off.
Yeah, one of the things in any of these computers is that if you have too many things running at once, it slows down the data transfer.
Well, especially if you're doing multiple tests here, you need to shut each test off before you do it. Now look at the update rate. By the way, isn't it just like generic OBD2? How many times have you raced the motor up and the RPM has not changed until seconds later? And we'll show you that in a second as well. All right, hit it. Okay, give it a little space now, let it come down. Okay. So now if you look at this, remember the yellow is the actual, and the red is where it wants it to be. We're pulling more than enough air in there, and it's 1 gram per liter. So if this is a 3.6 liter motor, okay, we should have 1 gram per liter. And we definitely have enough. If we didn't get to at least where the red was, we'd have an issue.
Now, it says we're minus 22, minus 18, and we're actually pulling more than the calculated, which really means that the mass air sensor is over-reporting.
Correct. And we're going to show you a bad one in a second. But I want to just switch. Pierre, can you put that cable in and take the other cable out?
Yep.
In the same hole. We're going to show you a couple examples here of what you need to look at when you're testing a mass airflow sensor. Now, if you don't have this tool, we always like giving you information. If you don't own the eScan, this tool does not take the place of a scan tool that's enhanced like the one that the Farsight has on their particular tablet. But for drivability, this is the tool you want to use. This is the tool that I use. It's a tool that Pierre
Me too,
uses.
yeah, all the time.
Okay? And we're not getting paid to say that. You come here, I have enough case studies like these that I have up here. Notice that this yellow shot up, and you notice the yellow here didn't meet the red, and it has that Bart Simpson hairdo, that frequency that's pulsing along.
That's an exhaust restriction.
That's right. That is an exhaust restriction, whether it's a bad cat or something in the exhaust system giving us an issue. Let's look at another one. Well, look at this one. Wow. Did it really go off the wall on this one?
So calculated was here, actual probably averaged in the middle of all that hair, that hash, and the hash indicates turbulence.
Now, right in this very shop, we do this all the time. Car comes in, just like you see Justin doing. A lot of times we're too busy, or traffic is a pain in the butt. We're not going to go take it out on the road. We're going to test it here and see what's what. And by the way, don't be surprised sometimes when you get a bad mass airflow sensor. We had it recently on a Chevy version like this GMC, that it was a known good part, a reputable part, because we don't put junk in. But it was defective.
Brand new.
Brand new. So you always want to test, not guess, right? So these are some of the things here that you want to look at. Now, you know, when you're looking at a mass airflow sensor, there's many problems with it. You know about CRC, mass airflow sensor cleaner. You know, some sensors you can clean, but there's many of them you cannot clean.
Right.
And they just have to be replaced. So we're going to show you, once again, we're going to switch back live to that.
You also have to watch for things like problems with contamination getting in, or people use air filters that use, I'm not going to mention the brand, air filters that use oil on them, and especially when they over-oil them.
Right.
It should be, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get back, and he's right, if the air filter has oil in it, or you got a PCV problem, that'll give you issues. So right now, we're right back on that screen, and why don't we start the test again? So it's asking you if it's a turbo or not. We're going to select no.
It's going to reaffirm that you have the right size engine, the right altitude, the right temperature. And select. These tests are not accurate if it doesn't know the conditions that they're running under.
Yeah. Now, one of the things, unfortunately, this has like 4 tailpipes in the back. One of the things we're going to try to do in a second is try to clog them up to show you you're going to get some frequency on the yellow. But let me answer a few questions while Pierre is explaining.
So
that.
right now, this is showing that the calculated is 7 grams per second, and the actual is less than 4. Now, a serious shortfall.
One of the questions asked, does it only work on natural aspirated engines?
And not pressurized, not turbos or superchargers?
This calculation won't be, that's why it does ask you.
It can't make that calculation accurately once you've got pressure, once it's blown.
So if you have a
turbo.
supercharger or a turbo, or you're on a diesel, it's obviously not going to be accurate.
Right.
Okay. So that way you have that question. So Justin, let's look at it again, then we're going to switch into the bad mass airflow sensor that you had on this car. That'll take a couple of seconds while we yak it. Okay, so you can see this thing is reporting big time. It's up there real high.
So now it's over-reporting. As soon as he gets into it, it over-reports.
Don't get into it that hard and let's see what you got. It's going way up there.
And if you can't see that on camera, calculated was here, actual was here. Now, it actually reversed itself.
Okay,
Calculated was here and actual was here. Now you got to watch when you're doing a test like this, that if you move too fast, there might be a lag time that it doesn't always catch up. You got to kind of be a little steady with it, see what your numbers are.
All right, give it a good snap. All right, you'll see when this comes across in a second. And it matched right up top.
Right.
So now what Pierre and I will do, we'll put a pair of welding gloves on, and we're going to go try to clog the exhaust up.
Without asphyxiating ourselves. Create an exhaust back pressure problem.
You get that side, I get this side.
All right, we're in it.
Good. Give it another shot. Again. Good. I don't know if we got any.
All right, I'm sure you could hear that on the microphones because we were right next to the tailpipes.
You got some up and down, but
you know what? We can't restrict it as well with our hands as you can with a bad catalytic converter.
But the next time you get one, or if this just had one tailpipe, because we do it in the class, would have been a lot easier, but we don't.
And actually, Eric, who's on the web tonight, we've done that in his shop just to test it out with pressure transducers also.
Okay, so let's shut it down, switch it over to the bad mass airflow. Let's switch this
to this display.
Yeah, let's switch it to this display. And I'm going to go look at a couple of questions while you can yak about a couple of more things there.
All right. We talked about that. Should I go to the next one?
So, does anyone have any questions on mass air or anything? Everyone okay with that? So what we're doing now is Justin is actually getting his hands dirty, believe it or not. Hey, look, he's screwing things. As it is the air filter in the mass air. Okay. So he is basically taking that out. We're going to put his defective mass airflow sensor in.
This is a specially prepared defective mass air sensor.
Oh, good question. What should we have seen if there was a clog? Pierre, could you go back to that slide, please?
Yes.
Here's what you would have seen, what we just went over a second ago, but it's okay. You should ask the question.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
What you're going to see is, because there's a restriction in flow, you're going to see your actual lower than your calculated, and you're going to see, as Jerry calls it, Bart Simpson's hair, sharp spikes. It's turbulence. It's uneven flow in the, basically in the exhaust because it's restricted. It can't push the exhaust out. It kind of builds up and shocks back at the combustion chamber, at the engine.
And we see a lot of these, Pierre, in the shop, and I got to tell you, you know, when they're that far gone, that's when you need a catalytic converter.
Right.
Now, one of the other things here on this motor, the question was, why are we seeing so much, you know, so many grams per second? Well, this car has a few different problems, and if it's not, like the minimal air rate's not right, the idle is not correct, it could cause a difference in grams per second. Everything has to be equal when we're looking at getting a right specification.
The idea is, if the engine size and all those things are selected right in the program, and the engine is breathing properly, and the sensor is reporting accurately, all the sensors, temperature and mass air, and for that matter, if they use some strategy using a map and barrel sensor, that would also affect it.
And these guys do, GM does use a map.
So, well, I'm trying to be more generic, but yeah, that's right. If any of these strategies are employed and those values are correct, then the calculated and the actual will be identical. But as soon as they're not correct, that's when you start having to look further to figure out what the root cause is. You're just looking at first to see if it's right or not. If it's not right, figure it out.
So Pierre, what do you think? Why was this reading more than the 4 grams?
You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I would say it's possible that it's just got a mass air sensor that's a little off, or maybe we're not really at 768 degrees in here.
Or it could just be that the idle is not really where it wants to be, or minimal air rate's not there.
And, you know,
or you want to be at the minimum.
The other thing is, this thing was in gear at that time, and usually when we're using that rule, we're talking about it being at idle, but not under some kind of a load. So it was under a slight load because it was in gear. So you got to kind of be careful about it. That's why it's good to do these tests on every car, good or bad, and note the results, so when you get a bad one, you have an idea what it should be. Really varies car to car.
You know, if you don't have this tool, you know, is it a calculation? Well, if you take calculated load PID on any scan tool and graph it, and we'll show you on this one, we'll take that PID, this will show you RPM and how slow update rates are. You want to head up to at least 90% of calculated load. Now again, depending on cars, if everything is, the motor is really where it's supposed to be, with all the correct settings, then you don't have a problem. I think Mr. Justin is done, so you ready to hop in there?
All right, wait a minute, let me switch to the other feed.
Okay, so as soon as he starts this up, we will get the other feed back up. So now this is his bad mass airflow sensor that he had in this car.
And he's going to go through the same thing because every time you run the tests, it asks you the question. So you have to run through these menus. It wants to make sure that it's calculating based on the right information. And then
okay, so now he's starting to go.
now he's that idle I was talking about. Now he's going to put it in gear and do the load part of it.
Wow, look at that.
Calculated, actual.
Now that is a good one.
Calculated was at something like, I'm going to call that 47 grams per second, and actual was at maybe 27.
Now that's a good one. Just to put hold on it for a second, and let's talk about that. Doreen, could you focus in on that? You good? Okay, so we're going to hit the hold button. Notice here that the yellow is nowhere where it should be. It's telling us we should be up here right away. You should run the test a few times like we're going to do in a second. And if you still have an issue where it's that low, number one, always check the basics. Is any air restriction? Can we have a clogged air filter? The duct could be clogged. And let's not forget intake valves clogged with carbon that we have seen on many, especially European cars. Okay? Anything with direct injection, by the way, GDI. Okay? So, GDI car. Yes, sir. So, let's run this a couple of times if you don't mind. So what he's going to do is take it off hold. We're going to do it again to make sure, because you don't want to just test it once, you want to test it multiple times. Wow, that's a dog.
What I like to do is take it down the road a little bit, or even in a parking lot, but give it a couple of different degrees of load.
So it's having an issue getting up there. Now, why don't we do this? Let's stop that test if you don't mind. You leave the car running. Let's go over to graphs, please. Let's select up top, make the top one calculated load. Okay, since we don't have it there, go to PIDs. And let's scroll up and find calculated load.
So what he's,
the first one up top.
just so you on the web understand, you can't select something in graphs unless
Okay,
you
now
first
graph.
selected it as a PID.
And by the way, it's always important to know what your calculated load is at idle. This is at idle now, right? Put it in park. You're in park. You got a 28% calculated load with this bad mass airflow sensor. A lot of cars have no calculated load at idle. Some have some amount, okay? But now let's do the test. Same thing we did before, because someone doesn't have it. You want to see if you can get to 90%.
And this would be what you'd get on a lot of other scan tools, basically.
Nothing, right?
Right.
Do it again. Give us another shot. Okay, please hit F5. Install it. F5 on your tool. That'll be to the right. It's on your scan tool. Here, show them. So basically, you're seeing here these humps.
There you go. Oop.
Yep, wrong one. Okay. So when you're looking at this mass air, RPM, well, when you go to look, if you could back it up, if you get to the backup tool, scroll it over a little bit.
Hey, you know what? This is a good time to kind of put this on camera here. I'm going to just scroll to the bar. There's a scroll bar on the bottom right of the program. If you move that along, you're basically going back through time. It's saving a lot more data than what's on the screen right this moment. So, yeah,
Let's see if I can do it.
but you know what? Too many hands on this thing.
Can't do it. All right, you know what? Let's take F5 off. Let's do it again.
Let's see if my plastic pen.
Give us some. Now the pen, it's finger time. Okay, so let it come down, and let's go back up, and then you get ready when I tell you. Okay, kill it.
And hold it. You want me to hold it?
So let's look right here. Let's zoom right in on the screen. If you could zoom right here, notice we're only up at approximately 80%, okay, when he got into the pedal. She's on it. She's on this, not on that.
She didn't hear you.
She did. She's on this.
Okay.
Okay. So what this tells you, if you didn't own this tool, you could go to any generic scan tool like Graphs and take calculated load and do it. Now, let's take this off hold, okay, and let's look at RPM, and I want you to race it up. I want you guys to listen in the background.
RPM is the second trace down here.
Go to digital, please. It'll be easier for them to look at. And let's put RPM. Okay, RPM's right here, number 2. All right, race it up. Give it a big broom.
Now, this thing won't rev all the way because the computer won't allow it to do that while it's in neutral in the shop.
Select all the PIDs. So now we're going to select all the PIDs. Go back to graphs. To digital, I'm sorry. So now, race it up.
You see what happened? It didn't respond right away. In fact, it didn't respond at all. Eventually it will. It'll catch up. But what happens is there's so much stuff for the computer to report that it takes too long.
Yeah, that's why when you're in OBD2, you don't want to pick more than 6 PIDs. So go back and just pick 1 PID. Looks like it may have froze up. Deselect or clear all. And just pick RPM.
Okay, so that's RPM. Now we're going to go to digital. The only thing that's going to really be reporting is RPM up top. And now if you'll rev it.
So it just boom, 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 boom.
And as you hear this,
as you hear the RPM, it's moving. Now, here, start selecting more PIDs. So keep doing that, Justin. Keep giving us some butterflies.
all right, I picked a few. Here we go.
And And now you give it RPM, it is RPM 9 something.
At this point, RPM is here. The bottom line is it's slowed down to the point where it's not updating very well at all. And the reason why is because it's got too much stuff to report.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with the scan tool.
Or the car. It's not the car's fault. This is just the amount of data you're asking for this system to deliver to you is making it take each little piece a little longer.
So let's clear that. And now let's look at that calculated load at idle with this bad mass airflow sensor. Remember the number? So you're impulse adjusted, right? Okay, so we got 27. 27 to 30. Okay, 29, 27, lowest 27, highest 30, 28, let's say is an average. Let's shut it off. Let's get your new mass airflow sensor in there. Let's switch to the other, look, the air switch cables.
The key to all of this is that it doesn't matter which tool you're using. Don't select too many PIDs. You want to home in on the data you want and only select that. If you ask for too much information, it's going to slow it down and you may actually miss something.
Right. So let's see if you have any questions before we go on to catalytic converter testing. Okay. So I'm going to come take a peek over here since Doreen's not technical, and we'll see. What are we looking at in the 8 channels? I'm going backwards. The 8 channels are basically just graphs of different PIDs. This is not a lab scope.
No, it's not a lab scope. Basically, when you're in those channels, you can select what the PIDs are, and then you can graph it. It's good for comparing, for example, load versus trim, something we were discussing in the chart before, but a lot of other things. You have to figure out what you want to do.
We picked a whole bunch of PIDs, was a question here. Rick, good seeing you. I'll see you out in vision, I bet. But anyway, Rick is right. A can-equipped vehicle or fresh weight on a scan tool is much faster than it normally is, but it'll still slow up when you start picking too many. And CAN has been around for many years, but when you try this on some older cars, he is absolutely right. Okay. So,
and as a rule, the newer the car, the faster the update rates.
And CAN transmits PIDs and packets. Rick Escalambre again. Good information there, Rick. Thank you. So we're going to start looking at and zone in on what we have up on the screen right now. And that is going to be using the front and rear oxygen sensor.
For cat efficiency.
The cat efficiency. So you see 50 on one side and 59, and let's look at one side at a time.
Now these traces, basically it's the front O2 and the rear O2. So in a conventional oxy sensor equipped car, front and rear, you're looking for the front to be switching and the back to be relatively steady but not locked in one place. That's what the computer's using to determine catalytic converter efficiency. And where it is, where the rear O2 is, depends on the strategy of that car and how the catalytic converter is built. So they're going to be different in different cars.
Now how about on the other side here, on that tank 2?
Now, same thing. In this case, the front O2 is green and the rear O2 is blue. And you're not looking for, the reason why it's 50% is the rear O2 is switching too much. They're both switching too much. Now, it could be that this car was just started and it wasn't really that hot yet and the cat really wasn't up to temperature yet. These tests are only valid once the catalytic converter is up to temp.
Now, one thing I want to say here, Pierre, on those both screens, Bernie has this set up where he tells you to do about 1,800. Now, we do a lot of cat problems, and what we found is that since different manufacturers may test at idle, and GM is one of them that sometimes tests at idle, some may test at a certain RPM. Usually, we look at the freeze frame data. All the freeze frame data is very, very important. What RPM did it set that P0, 420, or 430? And that's where you really want to test that. But we make it a habit so we don't have to look up vehicle specific for every car. We test that idle. We test that about 2,000. We're going to do this on this car. And we test somewhere near 3,000. If it fails in any one of those areas, that's what's going to be throwing your 420 or 430. We're going to show you on this car, this vehicle, Justin says, gets a 420 many of the times. And you're going to see what I'm telling you is absolutely holds true. You're going to see it pass at certain times and fail at others. So let's go to the next screen, Pierre, and look at this one. Look at the efficiency on one side, 73, okay, and look at the other side at 50.
Now in this case, you're looking at the front O2, it's moving around, it's actually pretty hashy. And the rear one is a little harder to see, but it's hovering near the bottom. And bank 2 is also hashy on the front O2, but it's quite hashy on the rear O2 as well.
Okay, so we're going to switch now back to a live setup. We're going to look, number one, at that the calculated load. So this will pop up in a second.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, Pierre has the tablet.
Well, you have the tablet.
So as they're getting the screen to come back up, it just went to sleep on us. We're going to be looking at this information. Go to calculated load just on PIDs, and let's see where you're at.
29%.
So it seems that even with a brand new mass airflow sensor, what's RPM on this car? Pick RPM PID.
No, he's gone.
You can select those important
So
inputs. So 5,600, 28%, that's its calculated load. Always good to take a peek at that to see what it is compared to freeze frame data. So now what we're going to do is go back with PIDs and pick the info PIDs. That way we could basically run the catalyst efficiency test on this car. Question, does it work with lambda sensors? Well, yes, the updated version of this does. You'll get a straight line up front, okay? So rather than looking at something like this right here, okay, the front oxygen sensor is not an oxygen sensor with air fuel, it'll be a straight line, okay? In this case, this car does use an oxygen sensor, and we'll look at both of these for now as it fills in. And notice the yellow and the green near the front O2s, the red and the blue, as Pierre is pointing, near the rear O2.
Now it'll ask you to do certain things to precondition for this test. So it'll say run it at 1800 RPM for a minute. You have to hold it steady.
But we're going to look at this a little different. Again, from a lot of experience using this, real world, look at idle. We're 98 and 99% on both of them. Okay, it's idle. We're going to let it do it for just a few more seconds.
And what you're seeing is normal switching on the front, on both banks, and a real steady line. You know, they're not giving you, the chart doesn't tell you exactly what the voltage is, but let's call that 700 millivolts, or 650 or
And
something.
you got, notice more frequency on bank 2.
Correct.
Okay. Now let's race it up to about 18 to 2,000, no more than 2,200.
And hold it. No, in neutral. Oh, you want to load it?
I mean, in neutral, excuse me.
Yeah.
Not in power.
Usually I like to run that, just let it real quick. Yeah. Okay.
Stay lower, go lower.
Basically what it's doing is baselining its data to see what the readings are. It's also making sure that the catalytic converter and the oxy sensors are good and hot.
Okay, so we're going to run it like this. Notice bank 2 is falling. Look at that.
And the bank one that's the front. The rear is pretty steady on bank 2. We also have a little less accurate control on mixture on the pre-cat sensor, but the post-cat sensor is jumping around quite a bit.
So notice bank 2 is down. Now let's bring this thing up.
You'll notice
About 3,000. Notice what's happening like a lot.
Bank 1 doing well. Bank 2 getting worse and worse as you ask it to work harder.
Okay, so now we're down. You can see it's really, really bad on bank 2. Let's let it idle. Now, Justin, on this car, excuse me, as we discussed earlier, every once in a while, what happens? So, in case you couldn't hear what he said, when he starts the car up, every once in a while it idles, he gets a check engine light, and it's a P0420. So, even though you follow the rules on here, let's do the 1800 again. Do the 1800. Okay, so he's going to stay right about at this, and you'd be happy and say, oh, I got a good catalytic inverter.
But if you do that long enough, you'll see it's dropping. And it's important to look at those readings, because if you see one side's real hashy, especially if the post-cat sensor is jumping around, that's a problem.
Okay, so we're going to let him run this for 1 minute. You notice it didn't take that long when we're up at the higher RPM. So right here, right now, you know, a tech in the shop is going, I'm good. I don't see a problem. This is why I'm telling you, you need to do it at idle. You need to do it at about $2,000, 18 to $2,000, and near 3,000. If it falls anywhere to 3, that's why you're getting a 420, 430. We do enough of them. And we use the Run Right stuff. We do cleanings on them, and it really brings most of these back. So right now, look at that. At way more than a minute, gentlemen, you let it idle. So you can't just depend on what it says here. You know, when Bernie makes a tool, or anyone makes a tool for that matter, maybe you remember the big box scopes, the Bayer, the Allens, the Marquettes, the Suns. Remember, they gave you things that were little templates. They were guidelines. This is a guideline. Bernie doesn't want to tell everyone you need a catalytic converter. And by the way, you should check all the fluid levels before racing someone's car up or driving it on a dyno, or even taking it for a test drive. Always check the basics. So this tool is pretty damn good. Again, for drivability, it is the best. So we basically went over in this a little more than an hour so far. We went over all of the stuff that we said we were going to cover in the beginning. And that was, again, fuel trim, the math testing, mode 6, and catalytic converter efficiency. There's much, much more in this tool. There's much, much more in this tool than what we showed you. This is only a small part because we just want to get you introduced to the tool. Okay? So, with that being said, we'd like to show you the tablet. Nice and close up here. It's a real nice, here's the back of the tablet. Nice and ruggedized. By the way, this thing's not on it. This is just our wireless connection, so we'll take that off. But basically, a really thin, unlike me, a really thin tablet, okay, has all the bells and whistles, nice little ports that you can seal up.
All toughened up for the shop environment.
Okay. And we would like to thank our sponsor, Farsight, and we're going to throw a couple of more questions out there. If you have it for them, remember, let me show you the great thing here. It's on the hot swappable battery. The barcode reader, rear camera, front camera, so when you're working on something, they can actually have you go to the car with it, look down on the car, and actually even see you and chat back and forth. The hot swap battery in the back, I'm going to let you break it.
It's not breakable.
It's not breakable, that's true. But this comes out pretty simple. So here the battery is out in his hand, okay, or in my hand in this case, and it's still on. You get another battery sticking in. How many hours will it go?
That's about 8 hours. This is about 15 minutes on the battery life.
Wow, 8 hours with the battery. And does it come with more than one battery?
There are options. You can get more batteries.
So you can get more than one.
Nice charging docking station, actually, to just keep going.
You hear that? Nice docking station. Unlike some of the other scan tools we're used to that the battery dies like right in the middle when you need it. Really nice setup here. And Doreen, do we have any questions there that we need to answer? No, we're pretty good. So before we go, we do want to remind you, TST, we have an upcoming event with our buddy John Anello, Autotech on Wheels. That'll be Diagnostic Strategies 2017. John is never lost for words or for new case studies, and he'll do this up in Massachusetts, February the 6th, the 7th in Connecticut, the 8th in New Jersey, and here in New York on the 9th. And there will be a simulcast that night. You get a full handout, a color handout, and you get a newsletter from TST. For members, it's $20 for the simulcast, $30 for non-members. If you want to show up in person, press the flesh, it's $50 for members and $75 for non-members. And then our big event. Well, this year we got one great lineup. Again, we're going to hopefully surpass our numbers last year of over 350 people. We have it on the 25th of March, a full day on a Saturday. We feed you breakfast, lunch, snacks. You get 3 handouts and a color newsletter. We got Tom Rake from Napa, Wayne Colonna from ATSG, Mark Warren from WorldPack, and our keynote speaker is Scott Brown. And the cost is $75 to everyone, thanks to our generous sponsors. So we have a whole bunch of different sponsors. Go look at our website, tstseminars.org. And again, for more information on Farsight, their website is www.farsightlive.com. So that's farsightlive.com. If you want their phone number, I'll get my fat head out of the way. It's 877-383-7999. We want to thank you again from TST. Go to our website, and hopefully you got something out of it. Thank you, and have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.